Καλώς ήρθατε στο podcast της Marketing Greece. Εδώ ενώνουμε δυνάμεις με όλους και αναλύουμε, συζητάμε, προτείνουμε, εμπνεούμαστε και συνεχίζουμε όλοι μαζί για τον ελληνικό τουρισμό.
Hello. And welcome to another Marketing Greece podcast. I'm Nikos Diamantopoulos. I'm the General Manager in Marketing Greece. And in today's episode, I'll have the chance to discuss tourism with a very special guest, Mr. Anthony Everett, Executive Chair and CEO of 4VI Social Enterprise Group. Welcome, Anthony. Welcome to Greece. Welcome to Athens. And thank you for this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'd like to begin by asking you to tell us a few words about yourself, who Anthony is, your role in Vancouver Island, and the very revolutionary, I'll say, business model shift that you've gone through the last few years. I think it's 3 years. I think that it was a few months before we met in that Green Destination Conference in Athens. Can you tell us a few words about that?
Sure. My name, I'm Anthony, and I've been in tourism in Canada for well over 30 years. And in 2022, I was lucky enough to lead a transformative change for our organization into a social enterprise. So I've worked this long time in tourism, various jobs, PR, public relations, marketing, most of it revolved around marketing and PR. And over time, I was observing a shift to this idea of what destination development is. Now we have this concept around stewardship. And through a series of government contracts and working with governments, I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure, if we're keeping pace with the rate of change with what the world is doing and what's happening with both visitors and what locals are thinking about our industry. And so basically, we decided that it was time for us to change or give recognition to a new way forward. You said it was revolutionary. It was never our intent to be that. We just thought for Vancouver Island, it was time for us to shift from traditional marketing role into something different, which was really about social responsibility, social license for our industry. And now it's gone in a whole range of other ways that I'm happy to share. And I have to reflect on the time that you and I met. So we had just launched what we were doing. So that was in 2022. We met in the fall. You and I met in the fall of 2022. You were very humble. I remember we were sitting together at lunch and you were talking about your role with marketing and things. And since that time, you said you followed, and here I am in Greece. I'm thrilled to be here and share a little bit about what we're doing. It really stems from my long background on Vancouver Island, but now I'm seeing what we're doing there is there's this recognition, not only what we're doing, but the world is changing. And this is an idea that seems to be gaining ground.
I've heard you speak in forums, in conferences, in other podcasts as well. And you always say that the upper goal, the vision would be for tourism to be a force for good. And given the fact that you've transitioned to this new business model, I'd like for you to share some examples, some projects or case studies that have helped you materialize that to the phase of the implementation of that mission. Do you have any specific that could inspire us?
Yes. I mean, I think the most important thing to recognize is that for me, we created this ambition, this idea that we could be different, but it had to be actionable. Like, there's no point in doing anything unless there's an action behind it. So for us in 2022, when we said we were going to focus on social responsibility, what is little understood about our role, our organization was focused on marketing for 50, 60 years, but our funding was changing. We weren't getting as much proceeds from government to build a marketing program. So we were being asked to do some other things. And so we decided to focus on that. The pandemic was actually a pivotal point because in the pandemic, maybe much like here, our organization completely changed in order to help businesses just survive, like to get through that time.
Financially.
Yeah, well, financially, but what was coming out of that is they wanted us doing different things to help them. So giving them different tools, marketing tools, giving them help, but with sustainability. So one of the two questions we were being asked by communities and businesses, what are you doing around climate action and climate change that is impacting us? And the other is looking at ways that they can be more sustainable as a business. So all that kind of coalesced coming out of the pandemic, and it was time for us to change. And so one of the first things we did as a tangible action was we did a carbon audit of what the climate impacts we were having on Vancouver Island. And I think it was very eye-opening for a lot of people. And we even got said, why are you doing this? You're going to make us look bad, right? Yeah. So we were doing something different. So we did that. But now we have an action strategy that has come out of that. We are a signatory to the Glasgow Declaration. And just last week, actually, we launched a really neat program where we work with businesses to build an EV charging station at their business. The government allows a credit to come back to the business because they've brought in an EV charging station. So it's revenue back to the business.
So they're giving incentives.
Yeah, incentives. To do that. But a little portion of that incentive also comes back to our social enterprise. Because as a social enterprise, we operate like a business. We have to create revenues to invest back into social good. So this is a program that meets all those goals, but it's also around EV chargers. Another one that just was fairly recent is we've created toolkits for businesses, particularly restaurants, to reduce their waste, which is a major climate impact. I think one of the lessons in our climate audit was that restaurants, it was surprising to us is how much food waste creates to the carbon footprint for Vancouver Island. So we've created toolkits for them. There's a long list, but another one this year, within the last year, we did a whole marketing, social digital campaign around telling consumers or people who are using the marine environment to not share pictures of whales or other animals in the marine environment, because
that's interesting.
By sharing, when somebody shares that on Instagram, they might be sharing what is the wrong behavior for the human, right? So in Canada, you have to keep a certain distance from in the marine environment, and when people don't do that, it creates this situation for the animals. So again, it's an example of the biodiversity that we're trying to protect and trying to work with. And those are just a few of the examples. I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that our goal was to create $10 million in Canadian dollars by 2030 to give back to communities and the people of Vancouver Island. And to date, we're almost at $4 million. And that's through our work, the revenues we create, government programs that we help implement back to businesses or to people on Vancouver Island. So we're well on our way, and that's the pressure I feel every day, is to try to do good. As a almost 30-year career of marketing, my mind is completely shifted to thinking differently and looking at what we do as an organization, and our organization is growing and getting stronger. I mean, it's all about learning, really. So,
and I suppose it's a difficult transition for you, but it would be a little more difficult transition for the businesses. And what strikes me when you're discussing about it is that businesses themselves were asking you to do this, because when a business has the profit as its first priority, it's not so easy to persuade or get them to buy into this new model. And we've seen here in Greece that businesses are a little bit reluctant to embark on this sustainability journey or have the social and environment as their priorities in the way that they're doing business. So I want to ask you, how did you manage it? How did you handle the businesses? Did you receive any backlash when you transitioned? I mean, you were a marketing organization. You're supposed to spread the awareness, to communicate the destination. Who's going to do that?
Right. So what we've gone through is fairly complicated for an audience that you and I are presenting to today in Greece. And the reality is there's lots of people doing marketing, right? The businesses, I firmly believe actually that there was a transition at some point, maybe around 2009, somewhere in there, where businesses were starting to reach their consumer quicker and easier than you and I as destination marketers, right? It's just a reality. I mean, the data even shows this. So I think, and that's progress. So businesses are relatively, but on a destination level in British Columbia, there's lots of communities and our provincial government, Canada, they're all marketing the destination. So our role for that could change and probably needed to change because somebody else needed to focus. So from a business level, that wasn't where the questions were coming because, as I said, in the pandemic, businesses were curious about what they could do around sustainability. And the reality is there's lots that they can do, but it's about the change that the consumer needs to make. So there's lots of subtle changes that you can make at a business to help a consumer be more responsible as well. I think the challenge that we will face as we move into our future is there's a crisis happening. Climate is one of those crises, and if not the crisis of our time. And I think we need to find access points for business to understand. If businesses only worry about what their profitability is in this quarter or the next quarter, or maybe 2 quarters, we need to help them understand they won't have a business if we're not looking 10 years ahead. That's how it'll be a force for
Is it easy to understand? Because here in Greece, we do have many small to medium businesses, family businesses and hotels and stuff like that. And it's not very easy for them to understand the long-term situation in tourism. So would like to find out what tools could we use, because that's a challenge for us as well, for the sector and for Marketing Greece, to get them to buy into this new era, the new challenges, do something about it.
Yeah, I think we just have to be consistent. I'm here sharing with my friend Nikos because I think there's work that we can actually do together. I think the world has shrunk. And so me, being on this podcast is just one little step. I think getting businesses to understand our job is to tell a new story for where we're from, whatever that is. The storytelling can shift to saying, I was just recently on the Canary Islands. I was completely, I was just blown away by what they're doing with businesses to show the shift they're going through around decarbonization. And there was 4 businesses that they just presented that were told their story. So that's marketing, right? They're telling their story as a business around what they're doing. There's
marketing
Spanish.
in everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's just a shift in how you're telling the story. So there was a laundry service that talked about how they have more employees. They're employing more people because they're now telling their story around all the laundry that they're doing for all the resorts and hotels on the Canary Islands and how that they're lessening the environmental footprint. And I think the reality is we know that it's 86-90% of consumers want sustainable options. So that, again, that's going to impact businesses' bottom line quicker than they think. So somehow we have to get them to think longer term, not only for their business. My board chair, who runs a very successful business on Vancouver Island that makes cider and has a restaurant and accommodation, she said to me, if we don't do this, I won't have a business. And so she is looking at it, and we need that collective voice, that collective action. But I think it starts with people like us. Yeah, right. And we have to set that course.
And this podcast can be a productive stepping stone. Let's say a brick on the wall on this thing that we want to build. I've read that you had significant growth in international arrivals and visitors the last few years. I think 2023 was a double-digit growth rate or triple. I don't know, in Vancouver Island. And I'm just wondering, do you have any, how do local or even national media handle or respond to complaints maybe from local communities or from stakeholders that tourism can become a burden, can have a negative effect on the destination, on the communities? And if you do something to handle this narrative, because, sometimes, and it happens in Europe and in Greece, every year and more stories are getting traction on that, on overcrowded attractions and stuff like that. And sometimes it's justified. Sometimes it's just, media. They have to sell something. And sometimes it's a huge distress from someone local or a municipality or something like that. What's the case there in Vancouver Island?
Well, what you're describing, there's no easy solution to these problems now. And, as human beings, we, myself included, or my family, we dream of travel. It's the reality. So in just a quick story on this, when in the pandemic in 2021, it was another pivotal moment where we were tracking all the people coming to Vancouver Island. Only Canadians could travel to Vancouver Island in 2021. And we had more people ever than before in human history on Vancouver Island. And that's when we really started getting a lot of questions from communities and people. Like, why are you, like, if you're promoting, which we weren't, by the way, but if you were promoting, why are you doing this? There's too many people. So, some of the actions we've helped do now is we help fund trail restoration and educational programs and all those things, right? But back to your point of, what I haven't seen yet is collective action from people like you and I. So you and I sitting here, hopefully beyond this podcast and beyond, which I'm sure we'll talk about the other thing I'm doing here in Greece, we can work together to talk about, because when I was here in 2022, I remember somebody, forgive me because I don't remember who it was from Greece, talking about the amount of people that come to Athens to go to the Parthenon, Acropolis, right? And I was like, oh my God. And I think that, but it's misleading through the media and other sources to say, that yes, all those numbers are coming, but look at all the things Greece is also doing to counteract it. And that story is not getting out there because collectively we're not working together to tell it. So recently, as I said, I was in Canary Islands. You think about this, people talk about mass tourism and these things, and these are big issues and problems, but we aren't telling it because they are doing amazing things. Actually,
and Spain is at the forefront.
They're doing amazing
stories.
things. And so when you think about the squirt guns and all that stuff that we've all heard about, there's Barcelona and other parts of Spain that are trying to tell their story, but they need all of us collectively to say, wait a minute, at the destination level, there's actually more progress happening here, and there's another story to tell. So I don't have the perfect answer. What we were trying to do and are trying to do is get ahead of the problems. I think in Canadian terms, we have been very immune. It's a massive country, Canada. Vancouver Island is way on the West Coast. We get lots of international visitors, all that. But, it's still relatively not what you see in parts of Europe, right? But it'll happen, right? That's coming to us. There are parts of Vancouver Island now that are, the Indigenous people are starting to, in their territories, limit people into places. And I think, I think that's something that we need to talk about more. And that's an okay thing. Like, we have to shift our minds and go from this idea that, it's a right to travel anywhere you want to go at any time you want to go. Well, it's actually a privilege, and maybe that's not what the planet needs for the future. So we'll have to work together. I just think simply that you and I and others that we meet, particularly in Europe, like, I'm really quite inspired by what I see in Europe, because I think there's a lot more happening than just what you see in the media. And I think we need to have a collective voice to say, wait a minute, those aren't good things, and that isn't great, but we're doing this.
Yeah, and that's exactly our strategy regarding that. We want to help these good stories, these good initiatives, because there are good initiatives that have the sustainability part of the destination, the local communities, the local element of the destination, and we want to, play a role of thought leadership for them to become a guide for all the others, and flood the media with these stories, because we have to get them in front.
Yeah, and I think that the trick here, or what we need to do together, is you need people like me here telling your story to your people, right? Yeah. And vice versa. Because I think that's where because it's just another message. It's somebody else saying, well, this is what I'm seeing. I think, because when I've been hearing great things about things that are happening in Greece to counteract these things, but I could tell your story better and you could tell mine. And I think we need to shrink the world, but we all need to shift. I was at Skift in September in New York, their big event, and it's starting to filter in this idea of social license, social responsibility, but it's not enough yet. It's still talking about profitability, and I'm sure the CEOs of the big OTAs they don't really care what I have to say, but what I'm saying is we need to somehow collectively, because one of the sessions was this idea that does tourism need a new PR agency, right? Because this is the year this summer was where tourism didn't look so good.
Yeah.
But what's our response? There really hasn't been a response, other than, locally there's some things. I think we need
a little bit spontaneous.
Yeah. I think we need to have, I was in Brussels or Bruges actually recently for City DNA, the European group, and I'm going to spend a lot of more time working with them, because I think they need to come together with some kind of counterpoint or counterbalance to these things, because there is another story to tell.
Yeah.
And then we need to all grapple together with this idea of balancing economic needs, viability of business, with another model or more thought around responsibility or travel or sustainability, all these things. I mean, when we started this in 2022, all we wanted to do was open a conversation about what balance could look like.
Yeah.
And it's
Can they coexist?
And it's completely, well, I think that I think they have to. I mean, you can, well, first of all, people want to travel. I want to travel. But do I need to travel as much? Do I need to I could stay longer? There's lots of options.
And as you said, travel is a privilege, but privileges do not come alone. They come with some obligations.
Right.
You have to respect the place that you're going to. You have to, and the vision is sometime in the future that tourism can have a positive footprint on the destination. I think that's your vision as well.
That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was not completely honest in the beginning of our conversation, because Anthony, you're not here just for this podcast.
No.
You're here because we invited you, and we're very happy that you accepted the invitation to be part of a project, of a journey in Crete, where you have the chance to live the experience of working remotely for a week from Vamos in Chania. It's a project that we're running through our initiative workfromgreece.gr. And we have invited you, as well as 5 others, destination experts from Budapest, from Düsseldorf, from Benidorm in Spain, from Ireland, and from Helsinki, to work remotely from Chania, to live together, to share your visions, or share your perspectives, brainstorm. And I think it will be a great experience. But my question has to do with the segment, with this particular segment, with this audience, the digital nomads and remote worker audience, because we truly believe that it can contribute to sustainable tourism growth. They stay longer to the destinations. They travel off season or during shoulder months. They blend with the locals. They connect with the destination. And they're great ambassadors. If they have a good experience, they will tell the others, because they organize themselves in communities. They communicate through Discord or Telegram. And we think it's a very viable segment to target. Do you believe so?
Yeah, I mean, you're more expert in this than I am, because I think, Greece is, and maybe a few other places, is very much, where people come to do remote work. So a few reflections that I have. First of all, when you look at the studies now that the Travel Foundation did, and it was released, I think, this year, around how we can reduce our carbon footprint, this is how, right? Is you travel less, but you travel for much longer. And it's more a sustainable option, right? You're not in and out of a place, I'm going to fly to Athens for the weekend and then you're back home. You're coming, you're engaging. I think, again, back to in Skift, there was a speaker there, Zita Cobb from Fogo Island, which is in Canada, and it's an amazing place. And it's all built around social license and social responsibility. Anyway, she was saying, when you go to a place, go with tenderness in your heart and live with the locals, like really engage. And I think that's another thing that is missing is, when you think of the package tours and the mass tours, I mean, there's a role for everything.
Yeah.
But
different products.
But if you're going to actually make an impact on a community benefit for local people. I mean, I'm sure local people want to engage with someone that's really interested in their culture, that wants to be there for longer. And so I think remote work again, back to the sustainability part, I really think, and you said another one, I just thought of it, it was as I was coming here, I was thinking, wow, because getting people to travel in the shoulder times has always been a challenge, and getting them to do that because they can work for longer, and providing them the tools through your good work around cultural expectations, because that's something that I care a lot about where I live. But someone was telling me about the Greek experience, about elders on these islands and the impacts of lots of people coming quick, short trips, how culturally and societally that's changing your islands. And it's the same for me at home. So remote work is a better way for people to engage with those cultures, shoulder times and sustainability. I think all that together, you said off the top this group that you've put together. For me, I mean, I wanted to jump at the opportunity because there's all these opportunities for people to be together from different parts of the world and really share and maybe come up with some meaningful action. So remote work provides all those opportunities, and it makes it very special. Like, I never thought Hanya, and if I'm saying that right, hopefully Hanya, and Vamos.
Hanya and Vamos.
Hanya. I was saying it right earlier, Hanya. And Vamos. I mean, if it wasn't for remote work, would I go there? Because that's the kind of opportunity. Probably not. So that's the kind of opportunity that remote work provides, and I think it's a great avenue. I don't even. I mean, marketing speak is it a niche? I don't know. It's probably a good.
I think it was a niche.
Yeah.
I think it's more mainstream right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think,
and it's gaining traction. It has a steady growth rate.
Yeah, I think giving people that work remotely, maybe they already know this, but as an employer, like give them tools so that they can help the remote workers be successful. Like with time change, like I'm 10 hours different from my workplace. So you have to have like the ability to deal with that in a remote context. But it's a really good one.
And you mentioned the culture, which we also have as a strategic priority. Cultural heritage. We really want to expose and display the stories of a destination. And maybe if you stay longer in a destination, you can find out about all those things. And let's say local craftsmen, that they're learning their craft to their kids and their children and generations. And it's a very nice thing for the visitor to experience. How do you build all those artifacts with the materials that this land provides, and we want to share that. And by sharing it, you have the chance to preserve it. So that's part of our strategy as well. You mentioned earlier the term stewardship. More and more lately, I'm coming across this term, destination stewardship. I think GSTC, WTTC, all of those have integrated it into their studies and researches and stuff like that. And I wanted to ask you to explain it in, I've heard that you mentioned caretaking as a good example of its meaning, but I want you to elaborate on that because it's a very nice word, but I really don't think that many have grasped the meaning as they should. And how can destination materialize, and how does it differentiate from destination management, let's say, which is the most popular term?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, tourism suffers from, new words and new terms and I mean, maybe every industry does.
Everyone wants to come up with a new term.
It exhausts me. And, simply put, for me, what resonates with this idea of stewardship, I just think of it as caretaking. It's another way to care for where you live. So this idea of...
Care is a very nice word.
Yeah, for me, stewardship, I mean, a lot of people don't even know what probably stewardship means. Forget the idea of tourism. So when I talk about it, I talk about caretaking. all of us come from a place. I grew up on Vancouver Island, and I want to care for that place or have a role in caring for it. Not just me. We all have a responsibility. I mean, I think that is a core value of this idea of stewardship or caretaking, that we all have a role to play. Because if a great place to live, it's also a great place to visit, then how do those two interact? And that's what caretaking. So again, as an industry, I think we need to shift this idea of marketing plans and all these things and integrate them all into how we're going to care for a place. So there's a whole range of things that go into caretaking. There's governance pieces, there's these kind of things. But, one of the things that I really strongly believe, unless you have a really big budget, I think it's really hard to be a manager of a destination, because the levers that you have, to restrict places over here because there's too many people and move them over here, help build road access, all the things that go into it. But what we can do is talk about how we want to care for it and who's responsible for what within a framework, and be that backbone support for that kind of change within communities and for people. Locals, the locals that I know on Vancouver Island they might be friends of mine, but they don't really know what I do. Or if they thought about it, they're like, oh, you just promote tourism. Well, I haven't done that for over a decade. But when I talk to them about this idea, I'm just saying, let's protect what you like to do. If you like to go fishing, you like to hike, well, we need to care for these places. And so that's what stewardship is.
Last question.
Yes.
And I want you to imagine that there are no microphones here, there are no cameras or whatever, and we won't broadcast this podcast. And I'd like your honest opinion. How do you see the future of tourism? Are you an optimist? Are you a pessimist? From one side, we have travel that is growing every year. From the other side, we have the decreasing spending power of major markets like Germany, let's say. We have the many challenges of the climate change. Do you believe that all stakeholders and businesses can get all behind a plan, a strategy that would materialize the vision of tourism, be a force for good?
You said an honest answer.
Yeah, an honest.
So as somebody who...
And I'll tell you mine.
Okay,
later.
so as somebody that, I believe as a leader, you have to be positive. You have to project positivity. You have to be optimistic. You have to be hardwired that way. And I think I am. But I have moments, lots of moments, where I'm like, I should... should I be giving the rest of my life to this? Because I don't know. I'm going to be... This idea of a force for good, or 100 years, 1,000 years in the future, I know this is hard for people to conceptualize, but that's how I'm trying to envision what good can look like. I'll be long gone, right? So on a day-to-day basis, what do I need to do? And I have moments where it's not easy, but every now and then, this is where I'm hopeful. And so overall, I am positive, because I think, I'm here. 2 years ago, I would never ever have imagined this. I would never have imagined being on the Canary Islands. They're doing amazing things. I'm sure there's amazing things happening in Greece. So I think we're getting there. We're getting there with a new message, new way. People are talking about sustainability. I look back 10 years ago. I've been doing this a long time. 10 years ago, I was probably one of those at sustainability. Like, what's that, yeah. Right? And now fast forward to today. So if I worry about anything, is the change going to happen quickly enough? My final thought on this is I'm positive. And you know why? Because young people today are going to demand this. They're not going to travel the way people are traveling now. I think they're prepared to shift. And I think, there's a whole set of people that are coming up behind us, young people that are coming up. They're going to want something different. My daughter talks about Indigenous people, sustainability, plastics in the ocean, things. I didn't teach her that. It's part of what they're encountering all the time. And I think that that's where we can be positive. And climate change, politically, the geopolitics behind this right now, we're probably at a difficult time. We're at a difficult point. But we have to take the long view. And at the end of this, what's our option?
Yeah.
I will wake up every day and be positive. So I might have bad moments, but we'll get there.
So the big picture, you're positive, and thank you for the positive message, because myself, I'm an optimist. I'm a natural born optimist. And I, for sure, I don't know if it's the conversation atmosphere here that's positive, and, we can see the long view, as you've said. But I also I can see that everyone talks about it. Maybe it's just talk for now, but actions are becoming a normality on that front. I'm not so positive, not so optimistic about climate change. I have to be honest there. I'm more of a realist. But let's keep the positive messages, and we'll see in a few years how it's going to evolve.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
And I hope you'll have a great experience in Chania.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστούμε για την ακρόαση. Ακολουθήστε μας στα social media και προτείνετε μας και εσείς θεματολογία για τα επόμενα podcast. Ο τουρισμός μας αφορά όλους. Στο επανειδήν.